Ambassador Kim Nari walked through the long hallway of Nexus Prime Station. Her black diplomatic uniform felt heavy under the bright lights. She had been to many alien meetings before, but this one felt different. The other species were angry about something, and she could sense it in the air. The meeting room was huge, bigger than a football stadium. The ceiling stretched so high that she could barely see the top. Alien delegates sat in groups around the circular chamber. Each species stayed with their own kind, like students in a school cafeteria. The Zephyrians looked like giant birds with colorful feathers on their heads. They kept making soft clicking sounds with their beaks. Nari knew this meant they were excited about something. Next to them sat the architects, tall beings made of what looked like living crystal. They never moved much, but their bodies glowed with different colors when they talked. In the corner, the collective had formed a writhing mass of tentacles and brain-like organs. They shared one mind between hundreds of bodies, which always made Nari uncomfortable. It was like talking to a crowd that thought with one voice. "The human representative may be seated," announced Chancellor Vexhai. He was a Zephyrian with especially bright red feathers. His voice came through the translation device, as cold and formal. Nari took her place at the small table marked Earth. It was much smaller than the other delegation areas. The message was clear. Humans were not considered important here. "We are here today," Vexhai continued, "to discuss the problem of human expansion into space that belongs to others." Nari frowned. She had studied all the legal documents before coming here. Every human colony had been built on empty worlds that no one else wanted. They had followed all the rules. Fleet Prime Telemon, a large Zephyrian with silver feathers, stood up. "The humans have been in space for only 200 years. We have been traveling between stars since before their sun was born, yet they act like they own the galaxy." Several alien delegates made sounds that the translator said meant laughter. Nari felt her face grow hot, but she kept her expression calm. Getting angry would only make things worse. "Honored delegates," Nari said, standing up slowly. "Humanity has followed all galactic laws. Every world we have settled was empty and unclaimed. We checked the records carefully." "Your records," hissed a voice from the collective. "Human records. Made by a species that learned to fly between planets yesterday." More laughter filled the room. Nari noticed something strange, though the laughter sounded forced, like people trying too hard to be funny. These powerful aliens were acting like bullies in a schoolyard, which meant they were probably scared of something. "Perhaps the human delegate does not understand," said Telemon. "Some of those worlds have been marked for future development for thousands of years. Just because we have not built cities there yet does not mean they are free for taking." Nari looked around the room. Every alien face was watching her with the same expression, the look adults give to a child who has broken something valuable. They expected her to apologize and promise to be good. Instead, she smiled. "I see," Nari said. "So these worlds have been marked but not used, not visited, not improved, not even surveyed, in many cases. Like putting your name on a library book, and then leaving it on the shelf for 1,000 years. The room grew quiet. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Dr. Park Jiho, her science advisor, leaned over and whispered in her ear, "Look at their body language. The Zephyrians are nervous. See how their feathers keep twitching. The architects are glowing brighter than normal. Even the collective is moving more than usual. They're not confident about this." Nari nodded slightly. She had noticed the same thing. These aliens were putting on a show, trying to look powerful and in control. But something was making them nervous. "The human expansion must stop," declared Vexhai. "This is not a request. It is a statement of fact. And if humanity disagrees," Nari asked quietly. The room fell completely silent. Telemon's silver feathers puffed up like a cat's fur. "Then the Galactic Council will be forced to take action. Economic restrictions, navigation limitations, perhaps even direct intervention. Nari felt a chill run down her spine, but not from fear. She recognized the tone in Telemon's voice. It was the same tone used by people who were trying to convince themselves as much as others. "I will need to discuss this with my government," Nari said. "Of course," Vexai replied. "You have 72 hours to give us your answer." As the meeting ended, Nari gathered her papers slowly. Around the room, alien delegates were talking in excited voices. They thought they had just put the humans in their place. Walking toward the exit, Nari passed Li Dongyun, her military advisor. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke, but his eyes were always watching everything. "Interesting meeting," he said, softly as they left the chamber. "Very interesting," Nari agreed. "I think we just learned something important about our galactic neighbors." "What's that?" Nari looked back at the Grand Chamber, where aliens were still celebrating their diplomatic victory. "They're more afraid of us than we are of them. The question is, why?" 3 days passed, like a slow storm building on the horizon. Nari spent most of her time in meetings with other human officials, talking through secure video calls back to Earth. The alien delegates seemed to enjoy themselves during this waiting period, acting like they had already won. Dr. Park Ji-ho knocked on Nari's door early in the morning of the 3rd day. He carried a cup of coffee and a worried expression. "I've been watching them," he said, sitting down across from her desk. "Something is very wrong with this whole situation." Nari looked up from her papers. "What do you mean?" "Look at who they brought," Ji-ho said, pulling out his tablet. The Zephyrians sent their entire diplomatic team, not just a few representatives, but everyone. The architects deployed their biggest thinking machines. The collective brought more bodies than I've ever seen in one place. So they're taking this seriously. Too seriously, Ji-ho shook his head. This is supposed to be about 12 small colonies, but they're acting like we declared war on the entire galaxy. Why would they need this much firepower for a simple territorial dispute? Nari sipped her coffee and thought about it. Ji-ho was right. The alien response was completely out of proportion to the problem. It was like using a tank to kill a mouse. "They're scared," she said finally. "Of what?" "We're one species with a handful of colonies. They have thousands of worlds and technologies we can barely understand." Before Nari could answer, her communication device beeped. It was time for the final session. The great chamber felt different when she entered. The aliens sat straighter, their various eyes and sensors focused on her with intense attention. There was electricity in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. Chancellor Vexai stood at the center of the room. Behind him, a massive holographic display showed a map of local space. Human colonies appeared as small blue dots, surrounded by vast areas of red and yellow that belonged to other species. "The Galactic Council has reached its decision," Vex announced. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "The human expansion ends today." The holographic display zoomed in on human space. 12 of the blue dots began flashing red. "Humanity will immediately abandon these colonies," Vex continued. "All human civilians will be relocated to older settlements. All human military forces will withdraw beyond the marked boundaries." Nari felt her stomach drop. Those 12 colonies housed almost 2 million people. They had farms, factories, homes, schools. Families had lived there for years. Furthermore, Vexai said, his feathers rustling with satisfaction, to prevent future conflicts. "Earth will accept guidance protocols from the Galactic Council." The words hit Nari like a physical blow. She had read about guidance protocols in classified files back on Earth. They were not guidance at all. They were chains. Species under guidance had their technology watched, their research controlled, their independence slowly taken away until they became slaves in everything but name. "I see," Nari said, standing slowly. "And what if humanity refuses this generous offer?" Fleet Prime Telemon spread his wings wide, a display of dominance that made him look twice as large. Then the Council will impose economic sanctions. Your cargo ships will find it very difficult to travel through hyperspace. Navigation beacons will malfunction. Trade routes will become dangerous. Other delegates nodded in agreement. The architects hummed with harmonious sounds that meant approval. The collective's mass of tentacles writhed with what might have been pleasure. Your species is young, added a voice from the collective. You do not understand how the galaxy works. We are offering to teach you. This is kindness, not punishment. Nari looked around the room at all the alien faces, watching her. They expected her to be afraid. They expected her to beg for mercy, or ask for more time. They had done this before, to other young species, she realized. This was a standard process for them. She reached for her personal communicator and sent a coded message toward Earth. The signal would travel through quantum relays and reach home in minutes. Certain people would be very interested to hear about this conversation. I need to consult with my government, Nari said calmly. Of course, Vexhai replied with false kindness. You have until tomorrow at noon to give us your final answer. But do not mistake this for negotiation. The decision has been made. You can accept it peacefully, or we will implement it by force. As the session ended, alien delegates began talking excitedly among themselves in their various languages. The translation system filled the air with cheerful sounds of victory. They thought they had just solved the human problem without firing a shot. Nari walked toward the exit, passing Li Dongyun near the door. The former Marine stood perfectly still, but she could see tension in his shoulders. How long? She asked quietly. The message reached Earth 18 minutes ago, he replied. Response should come within 6 hours, and after that. Li's expression was completely calm, but his eyes were cold as winter. After that, I think our new friends are going to learn something about humans that isn't in their history books. As they left the chamber, Nari could hear the aliens still celebrating behind them. They had no idea that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. The countdown had begun. The message from Earth arrived faster than anyone expected. President Choi Minho's response was short and polite, the kind of formal language diplomats used when they wanted to be very clear about something. Humanity respectfully declined the Galactic Council's demands and looked forward to continued peaceful relations as equals among the stars. The alien delegates read the message with growing disbelief. In the Zephyrian section of Nexus Prime, Fleet Prime Telemon slammed his clawed hand on the table hard enough to crack the metal surface. Equals, he screeched, his silver feathers standing straight up. These primitive mammals think they are equals. Within hours, the Zephyrian Third Fleet received departure orders. Admiral Kreshtar, a battle-scarred veteran with dark blue feathers and scars across his beak, commanded 47 warships. He had put down 3 colonial rebellions in his career and expected this to be easier than the others. Humans had no real military to speak of, just patrol boats and mining ships. The fleet's destination was New Geneva, humanity's most successful colony in the disputed area. It was a farming world that fed 3 neighboring systems, built around a planet with perfect soil and gentle weather. Most importantly, it was lightly defended exactly. The kind of target that would send a clear message without requiring a real fight. Captain Yang Subin was reviewing crop reports when the warning came in. His office overlooked New Geneva's main city, where 2 million colonists lived and worked under an artificial dome that protected them from space radiation. The planet's orbital defense consisted of 6 patrol ships and a handful of automated weapons platforms. Nothing that could stop a real military force. Sir, called Lieutenant Hanura from the communication station. We have incoming ships, a lot of them. Yang looked at the tactical display and felt his stomach sink. 47 red dots surrounded his planet in a perfect blockade formation. Each enemy ship was 10 times larger than his biggest patrol vessel. By any reasonable measurement, New Geneva was completely helpless. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Kreshtar's predatory face. His translator made his clicking sounds into crisp, commanding words. "Human Administrator," Kreshtar said. "I am Admiral Kreshtar of the Galactic Enforcement Division. This system is now under our control by order of the Galactic Council. You will stop all operations and prepare to surrender your authority." Yang studied the alien commander's confident expression. Kreshtar looked like a hunter who had cornered a rabbit. He expected this to be simple and quick. Admiral Yang replied calmly, "This colony operates under Earth colonial authority. I don't have the legal power to surrender our rights to unauthorized forces." Kreshtar's head tilted to one side, the way a bird looks at something it doesn't understand. "Unauthorized. We are implementing Official Council Resolution 847 Gamma. Your primitive government has already been told about this. I understand your position, Admiral. However, I am required to inform you that you have 48 hours to remove your forces from this system." The silence that followed stretched for almost 30 seconds. Yang could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Around the command center, his staff stared at him like he had lost his mind. When Kreshtar finally spoke, his voice carried a mixture of shock and amusement. "Are you making threats, human? With what weapons? Your cargo ships and farming equipment?" Yang's face showed no emotion at all. 48 hours, Admiral. New Geneva, out. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in complete silence. Lieutenant Han turned to stare at her captain with wide, frightened eyes. "Sir," she whispered, "was that smart? They could destroy the entire planet from orbit if they wanted to." Yang smiled, but it was not a happy expression. He remembered his last briefing from Earth Command, 3 weeks ago. The briefing that had made him promise never to discuss certain topics with anyone, not even his own officers. "Lieutenant," he said quietly, "I don't think the Zephyrians are going to be our main problem for much longer." On board the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kreshtar was having a similar conversation with his staff. His tactical officer, a young female named Velsira, looked confused and worried. "Admiral, should we take the humans' threat seriously? Our intelligence says they have no significant military capability." Kreshtar laughed, a harsh sound, like metal scraping on stone. 48 hours, or what? They'll throw farming tools at us. Let them try. This will be educational for them. But, as the hours passed, something strange began to happen. Long-range sensors picked up unusual activity in nearby systems. Human civilian ships were moving in organized patterns, heading away from major trade routes. Communication traffic between human colonies had increased dramatically, using codes that the Zephyrian computers couldn't break. "It's probably just panic," Kreshtar told himself. "They know we're here, so they're running around like scared animals." Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. In all his years of military service, rebellious colonies had always followed the same pattern. They either surrendered immediately, or fought desperately with whatever weapons they could find. They didn't issue calm ultimatums, and then wait patiently as the deadline approached. Kreshtar found himself staring at the peaceful farming world below. New Geneva looked exactly like what it was supposed to be, a helpless agricultural colony, with no way to fight back. So why did he feel like he was missing something important? The answer would come in 37 hours and 15 minutes. 47 hours and 32 minutes after Captain Yang's ultimatum. The sensors in the Zephyrian home system detected something impossible. A single human ship had appeared from hyperspace near the outer edge of their solar system. The vessel was small, no bigger than a science ship, and it moved slowly toward the distant planets like it had all the time in the world. Defense. Command Admiral Velthus watched the approaching ship from his command station above Zephyros Prime, the homeworld. His fortress was the size of a small moon, filled with enough weapons to destroy entire fleets. The idea that one tiny human ship could threaten anything seemed ridiculous. Single contact, Minimal energy readings, reported his sensor officer. Should we send interceptors to destroy it? Velthas waved a dismissive wing. Let it come. I want to see what these humans think they can accomplish with one little ship. The human vessel, which identified itself as U.S. Archimedes, took position near Kepler-4 for to be a cold, rocky planet on the edge of the system. No one lived there. No one had ever wanted to live there. It was just a ball of stone and ice that orbited their sun like a forgotten toy. Probably taking sensor readings, suggested the tactical officer, gathering information for some kind of intelligence report. The Archimedes deployed what looked like a standard scientific probe. The small device drifted down toward the planet's surface, while the human ship waited patiently above. For several minutes, nothing happened at all. Then, every alarm in the defense station began screaming at once. Energy spike, shouted the sensor officer. Massive power readings from the probe. Location, on the main display screen. Kepler-4 for 2B looked exactly the same as always. A brown and gray world of rocks and frozen dirt. Then something began to happen at the spot where the probe had landed. The planet started to disappear. It began as a small, dark spot, no bigger than a city. But the spot grew larger with each passing second, spreading across the surface like spilled ink on paper. Where the darkness touched, the planet's surface simply stopped existing. Mountains, valleys, even the frozen atmosphere, everything turned into pure energy that shot up into space in brilliant beams of light. What are they doing? Velthas whispered, his voice shaking. His sensor officer's hands trembled as he read. The instrument displays. Sir, the energy release is being controlled and collected. They're not just destroying the planet, they're harvesting all of its matter and turning it into usable power. The process moved faster now. Entire continents vanished in minutes. When the spreading effect reached the planet's core, the molten rock inside continued to dissolve, just like everything else. The energy beams shooting into space grew brighter, and brighter as more matter was converted. 12 minutes after it began, Kepler-4 2b was completely gone, where a planet had existed for billions of years. There was now only empty space and a thin cloud of glowing gas that was already drifting away. The human ship waited calmly in the void, then broadcast a message on all communication frequencies. This was a demonstration. The process can be applied to any planetary body, regardless of size, composition, or defensive systems. Admiral Kreshtar, you now have 12 hours to withdraw your fleet from New Geneva. Future violations of human territorial sovereignty will result in proportional responses. Have a pleasant day. The transmission ended. The UES Archimedes jumped back into hyperspace, leaving the Zephyrian home fleet staring at empty space where a world used to be. Velthas sat in his command chair like a statue. Around him, his officers whispered to each other in shocked voices. Several were openly crying, their feathers drooping with terror. How? Velthas finally managed to ask. How is this possible? His science advisor, an elderly Zephyrian with white feathers, checked his instruments with shaking hands. The energy pattern suggests some kind of self-replicating nanotechnology, microscopic machines that break down matter at the molecular level and convert it to pure energy. But the scale, ... We've never seen anything like this. Can we defend against it? I don't know. Maybe. But Admiral, they just consumed an entire planet in 12 minutes. Even if we could stop it, how many worlds would we lose trying? In the New Geneva system, Admiral Kreshtar received the news through quantum communication relay. The message arrived 17 minutes after the demonstration, along with detailed sensor recordings that his science team confirmed were genuine. Stared at the tactical display showing his proud blockade formation surrounding the peaceful farming world below. 47 of the most advanced warships in the Zephyrian fleet, armed with weapons that could crack continents and shields that could survive the explosion of stars. All of it suddenly seemed as fragile as paper against fire. Sir, asked his Tactical Officer. What are your orders? Kreshtar looked at New Geneva spinning slowly beneath them. 2 million human colonists going about their daily lives, farming and building and raising families. They looked so normal, so harmless. But somewhere in human space, other ships like the Archimedes were waiting with technology that could erase worlds. Signal the fleet, Kreshtar said quietly. We're going home. The evacuation order went out within the hour. By sunset on New Geneva, the sky was empty of enemy ships. The humans had kept their promise. The demonstration was over. Now the real negotiation could begin. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Kim Nari walked through the same hallways of Nexus Prime Station, but everything felt different now. The alien guards who had barely looked at her before now stood at attention when she passed. Other diplomats in the corridors stepped aside and bowed politely. Even the cleaning robots seemed to move more carefully around her. The great meeting chamber had changed to where before the alien delegates had lounged casually in their seats. Now they sat straight and alert, every eye, sensor, and tentacle focused on her, with the kind of attention usually reserved for dangerous predators. Chancellor Vexhai opened the emergency session with none of his previous arrogance. His red feathers were dull, and his voice shook slightly as he spoke. The Council recognizes Ambassador Nari of Earth, he announced, then quickly sat down. Nari rose slowly, taking her time to look around the room. The massive architect beings were glowing with nervous energy. The collective's writhing mass of tentacles moved constantly, betraying their anxiety. Even the proud Zephyrians kept their feathers pressed flat against their bodies in submission. Honored delegates, Nari began, her voice carrying easily through the now sealant chamber. Humanity wishes to clarify recent events. The demonstration at Kepler 442b was exactly that, a demonstration. We have no desire for conquest, no plans for territorial expansion beyond our existing colonies, and no intention of threatening peaceful neighbors. Fleet Prime Telemon raised one wing hesitantly, like a student asking permission to speak. His silver feathers, once so magnificent, now looked faded and tired. Ambassador, he said carefully, if I may ask, ... How long has your species possessed this capability? Nari smiled gently. The basic science has been understood for decades. Practical application required advances in nanotechnology and matter conversion that we achieved approximately 8 years ago. A shocked whisper ran through the chamber. 8 years, someone said in disbelief. They've had planet-destroying technology for 8 years, and never used it. We prefer diplomacy, Nari replied simply. Military action is wasteful, and usually unnecessary. Most problems can be solved through reasonable discussion between civilized beings. The word civilized hung in the air like a challenge. These aliens who had tried to bully humanity just weeks ago now found themselves wondering if they qualified for that description. Chancellor Vexhai cleared his throat nervously. What would humanity consider reasonable terms for continued peaceful relations? Nari activated her personal display, showing the disputed star systems. Very simple. Recognition of our existing colonies, standard trade agreements under current galactic law, and mutual respect for everyone's territorial boundaries. Nothing more complicated than what you already practice among yourselves. The relief in the room was so strong, Nari could almost taste it. Several delegates actually slumped in their seats like people who had been holding their breath for hours. The Council finds these terms completely acceptable, Vexhai said quickly. Perhaps we might also discuss expanded cultural exchange programs, technology sharing agreements, mutual defense treaties. Other delegates began speaking at once, all eager to offer friendship and cooperation. The architects hummed with harmonious tones of peace. The collective's tentacles waved in what their translators said meant enthusiasm. Even the Zephyrians were making musical sounds that indicated joy and relief. Earth is always interested in beneficial partnerships. Nari nodded graciously, as the session concluded with unprecedented cooperation. Dr. Park Ji-ho approached her in the corridor outside. His expression mixed amazement with worry. "That went better than expected," he said. "Do you think it will last?" Nari looked back at the chamber, where alien diplomats were already forming lines to schedule private meetings with the human delegation. Some were offering rare technologies, others proposed joint research projects, and a few were quietly asking about defense agreements in case other species became aggressive. "I think so," she said. "Fear is a powerful teacher, but respect lasts longer. They're not just afraid of us destroying their planets anymore. What else would they be afraid of?" Nari's smile held secrets that even her closest advisors weren't cleared to know. "Ji-ho, we just demonstrated technology that can consume entire worlds and convert them to pure energy. What do you think we've been working on during the 8 years since we perfected that?" As they walked toward their quarters, Ji-ho thought about the implications. If humanity had kept planet-killing technology secret for 8 years, what other surprises might they have? What other technologies were hidden in Earth's research facilities? Lee Dong-yoon joined them near the diplomatic quarters, carrying a report from Earth Command. "New orders?" Nari asked. "Trade negotiations," Lee replied with a slight smile. "Seems like half the galaxy wants to buy our agricultural products now. The other half wants to sell us their most advanced technologies at bargain prices, and military concerns. 3 species have quietly asked if we'd be interested in mutual defense pacts. 2 others have requested that we mediate their border disputes. Apparently, nobody wants to fight when humanity might get involved." Nari nodded thoughtfully. Through the station's large windows, she could see ships from dozens of species docked at Nexus Prime. For the first time in galactic history, they were all here not to threaten or demand, but to negotiate as equals with the newest member of the cosmic community. The stars outside seemed brighter somehow, and the galaxy felt like a much more peaceful place.